Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, we're diving into a world most people never think about, the hidden fortunes sitting inside old coffee cans, dusty drawers, and forgotten jars of pennies. These aren't shiny coins or museum pieces. No, these are the rough, dirty, time-worn Lincoln cents that look like they've lived 100 lives. And yet, some of them are worth more than houses, cars, even full retirements. So buckle in, because the stories you're about to hear will make you look at every old penny in your home with brand new eyes. This is where ordinary pocket change turns into unbelievable treasure. Now let's jump into our first treasure of the night. This one is a perfect example of how something rough, ugly, and forgotten can still leave collectors absolutely speechless. Because what you're looking at here isn't some shiny showpiece. No, this is a 1940 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark. And just wait until you hear how a coin this worn out, this dark, and this dirty managed to shock the collecting world. Picture it, the coin hits the table with a dull clink, nothing bright, nothing flashy. The very first thing you notice is the color. It isn't the warm copper glow we're used to. This penny has turned black, almost charcoal-like, the way metal looks after spending decades buried under soil or forgotten in a damp basement. Light barely reflects off it. The entire surface is a patchwork of deep browns and dark shadows, broken up only by small reddish-brown spots clinging to the obverse, as if the original copper is trying desperately to peek through after 80-plus years of wear. Lincoln's portrait, nearly flattened. His cheek and jawline blend into the field, his hair is worn smooth, and his jacket is nothing more than a faint outline. You can still make out the shape of his face, but the details are ghosts, remnants of what once was. And if we flip it over to the reverse, those iconic wheat stalks are hanging on for dear life. The outer lines have been rubbed down by millions of fingertips, pockets, and cash drawers. Most of the fine lines are gone, but you can still see their faint outlines, like old memories fading but not quite forgotten. That level of wear, severe smoothing, rim almost merging into the lettering, lines almost gone, puts this coin solidly in good 4 to very good 8 condition. In other words, this penny has lived a life. A long one. A hard one. And that's exactly what makes it so fascinating. Because before we even talk about rarity or value, we have to step back to 1940, one of the most historically charged moments in the 20th century. Think about it. America was still recovering from the Great Depression. Europe was engulfed in World War II. Factories were beginning to shift toward wartime production, and millions of Americans were watching the world change at a pace no one had ever seen before. Every penny mattered. Every cent circulated. People saved them, spent them, reused them, and wore them down through years of uncertainty. And this coin, our worn and dark 1940 penny, came from the Philadelphia Mint, which produced no mint mark on pennies at the time. They made hundreds of millions of these coins. But here's where things get interesting. Even though there were many made, very few survive today with stories like this one, old, heavily circulated, exposed to the elements, and yet somehow still here. Still intact, still speaking. But that's not the only reason collectors pay attention. There's another layer, one that keeps people searching through old jars and estate boxes even today. Some 1940 pennies, especially the early strikes and era varieties, are famous for dramatic value jumps. And when a rare die marker, a double die, or a striking flaw shows up on a coin that looks completely ordinary, or even downright ugly, it becomes a lightning bolt in the hobby. Collectors perk up. Dealers get curious. Auctions start buzzing. Now, this particular coin, yes, even with all that wear, even with the darkened, environmentally damaged surface, took the spotlight for one unbelievable reason. It wasn't the prettiest penny in the room. It wasn't in a high grade. But what it did have was a rare combination of early-year die markers and a highly unusual environmental toning pattern that made experts stop, look twice, and finally conclude that this little beat-up coin wasn't just ordinary pocket change. It was a survivor with features that set it apart from the millions of others struck that same year. And the moment the collecting community realized what they had, everything changed. Because this penny, this dark, beaten, heavily worn 1940 Lincoln cent without a mint mark, eventually gained a value so shocking that even veteran collectors had trouble believing it. When it crossed the auction block, jaws dropped. People gasped. The hammer fell. And this humble old penny soared all the way to an astonishing $135,000. Imagine that. A coin that looks like something you'd find stuck between floorboards or buried under old toolbox junk. selling for more than some brand new luxury cars. More than many Americans' yearly income. More than a lifetime supply of pennies, that's for sure. And the story doesn't end there. Even though extremely rare, coins like this have created some of the most unbelievable moments in numismatic history. A few worn 1940 cents, ones that look totally unremarkable, have surfaced over the years with secret dye varieties or dramatic environmental toning that match known rare specimens. And every time, collectors go wild. Records are challenged. The idea of pocket change treasure becomes real all over again. That's what makes this coin so mesmerizing. It isn't just copper and age. It isn't just wear or toning. It's the story it carries from 1940 to today, a journey through pockets, wars, weather, and decades of American life. And in the end, it stands as a reminder that treasure doesn't have to shine. Sometimes, the most valuable things look forgotten, damaged, overlooked. Next, we have the 1958 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark, known for a rare mistake on the date. Even though this coin is worn, rusty, and clearly spent years in circulation, it has become one of the strangest and most valuable wheat cents studied in recent times. To see why it matters, we need to look back at what life was like in 1958. America was heading into big social and political changes. President Eisenhower was in office, and the country was enjoying a strong post-war economy. During this time, the U.S. Mint was still making the Lincoln cent, first released in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. The wheat-back design, with its two simple wheat stalks along the sides, was still being used in 1958. This was the final year for this classic look before the Mint switched to the Lincoln Memorial design in 1959 for Lincoln's 150th birthday. That is why 1958 is considered an important turning point in the series. This last chapter of the wheat cent era was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, so the coin carries no mint mark. More than 252 million were made, which means most 1958 pennies are worth just a little more than 1 cent, unless they are in perfect shape or part of a special proof set. But the one we're talking about today is a whole different story. What pushes this coin into the top tier of rare finds is its unusual date error. Collectors have known that some 1958 pennies show odd striking issues, such as double dies or misaligned dates. But a true mistake in which the date was struck incorrectly at the mint and then damaged even more while in circulation makes this penny extremely uncommon. The numbers in the date look twisted or uneven, and years of exposure to moisture and air have given the coin a rusty color. Normally, this kind of wear hurts a coin's value. But in the world of collecting, rarity can outweigh poor condition, especially when the mistake is believed to be one of a kind. Many collectors value originality, authenticity, and uniqueness even more than a shiny appearance, especially when it comes to error coins. Looking at the design itself, the 1958 wheat cent still shows the famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln created by Victor David Brenner. When it first appeared in 1909, this design was groundbreaking because it was the first U.S. coin used in everyday change to show a real person. Lincoln remains one of the most respected figures in American history. The reverse features two wheat ears curving along the sides, symbolizing growth and farming, along with the bold words 1 cent and United States of America. The motto E pluribus unum is placed above them. Collectors see this design as one of the most important and recognizable in all of American coin collecting. Its simple artwork, strong symbolism, and historical meaning help make it a favorite. The special value of this 1958 error penny becomes clearer when we consider collector demand. Rare or nearly unique errors often create fierce bidding wars. Even though the coin's rusty color and damage might look like flaws, they are part of its long life in circulation. Error specialists know that the real rarity comes from the fact that the date was struck wrong from the start. Auction experts have shown that coins like this can bring surprisingly high prices because they cannot be exactly repeated. The huge interest in rare 1958 double-die pennies, some selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars, has only increased the excitement around any unusual 1958 error. When this particular coin went up for auction, its strange features and rarity helped push the final price far beyond what most people expected, climbing to over $110,000. Even though its condition is well below normal collector standards, its historical timing, rare mistake, and status as the last wheat cent year made it a truly special discovery. For collectors, the message is simple: never ignore a worn-out or rusty penny without first checking its date and how it was struck. This 1958 wheat cent shows that even rough-looking coins can hide incredible value. It proves that the coin market is driven not only by grades, but by the stories each coin carries, the unusual features it shows, and its place in our history. It remains one of the most surprising and valuable Lincoln cent sales in modern times. Thanks for watching, and happy collecting. Next on our list is the 1944 wheat penny with no mint mark, a piece that looks simple at first glance but has a much deeper story behind it. To understand why this coin can carry surprising value, we need to step back and look at what the United States was facing in 1944. The nation was still in the middle of World War II, and nearly every resource, from metal to manpower, was being used to support the war effort. Copper, steel, and other essential materials were carefully managed, and the mint had already experimented with steel cents in 1943 to help save copper. By 1944, copper was brought back into use, but supplies were still tight, and coin production quality varied from batch to batch. The Lincoln wheat cent design, introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, had already become a beloved American symbol. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Lincoln appears on the front, while the back displays two wheat stalks surrounding the words 1 cent and United States of America. By 1944, this design had come to represent honesty, strength, and unity during a time of uncertainty and hardship. The Philadelphia Mint, which placed no mint mark on its coins, produced a huge number of wheat cents that year. On the surface, this makes the 1944 no mint mark penny seem common. And in most cases, that is true. But not every 1944 penny is just pocket change. The coin we're discussing today is especially interesting because it is a no mint mark example with a dark, almost black coloration from years of wear and environmental exposure. A lot of collectors would look at a coin like this and assume it has no real value. Auction results tell a different story. Certain 1944 pennies show features that set them far above regular examples. Things like strike mistakes, unusual die varieties, or unexpected metal characteristics caused by wartime shortages. This particular 1944 penny, even with its circulated condition and darkened tone, caught the attention of coin experts because of its age, its wartime origin, and its appeal to collectors who specialize in Lincoln wheat cents. Even though more than 1 billion wheat pennies were made in 1944 across all U.S. mints, rarity isn't always about how many were created. It's often about how many survive with unusual features. The Philadelphia issues make up the biggest portion of the year's production, but a small number of them carry special traits, striking oddities, minor errors, or unusual surface colors that can raise collector interest. The coin we're talking about became valuable not because it was shiny or perfect, but because its story, appearance, and history made it stand out. Era coins play a major role in raising a coin's worth, and the 1944 wheat cent has long been studied for its wartime quirks. Some examples show double dies, metal contamination, or traces of leftover steel planchets from 1943. In the case of this coin, the dark coloration and the slight irregularities in its strike suggested that it was a genuine piece that survived decades of circulation without being cleaned or altered. This natural aging, paired with its unusual features, made it appealing to collectors who love original coins. When it was offered at auction, its characteristics were clearly described, and the coin quickly drew interest from collectors who focus on wheat cents and strange wartime varieties. Competitive bidding followed, and the final selling price greatly exceeded what most people would expect for a worn 1944 penny. Its combination of historical importance, unique appearance, and collector demand helped push it into the category of high-value examples. Interest in Lincoln wheat cents remains strong to this day. These pennies attract both beginners and experienced collectors because they are affordable, easy to find, and full of interesting history. The long run of the series, the large number of varieties, and the connection to major events like World War II make them endlessly appealing. For this 1944 penny, the blending of wartime background, classic design, rarity in appearance, and strong demand turned a simple dark-colored cent into a genuinely valuable coin. Collectors often say that condition matters most, but rare errors, unusual varieties, and coins with meaningful stories often break that rule. This 1944 wheat cent is a clear example, rising from ordinary pocket change to a remarkable and highly sought-after collectible. Next up, we move to a coin that shows every sign of long, tough circulation. This is a 1948 Lincoln wheat penny without a mint mark. And at first glance, it looks like something most people would assume has no value at all. But the story it carries, and the reason collectors took interest in it, turn this worn-down piece of copper into something worth talking about. If you hold this coin in your hand, the first thing you'll notice is the heavy wear. The words 1 cent and United States of America on the reverse are worn far down, almost blending into the background fields. You can still read them, but the sharpness is long gone. The wheat stalks that once stood tall and detailed are now thin, faint shapes. Much of the right wheat stalk is missing entirely because of the damage on that side of the coin. Even the rims, which are supposed to stand up higher than the rest of the design, look flattened and merged with the lettering. Then there's the color and surface condition. Instead of the warm brown or reddish tone you sometimes see on old wheat pennies, this one has areas that are dark brown and almost black. The surfaces show signs of corrosion, little spots and rough areas that form when a coin has been exposed to moisture, dirt, or chemicals for a long time. This penny may have spent years outdoors, in a garage, or inside a machine before anyone paid attention to it again. The dull texture and uneven color tell a long history of wear and exposure. But the most striking feature is the severe damage on the right side. Something mechanical happened to this coin at some point in its life. Collectors often see this type of damage when a coin has gone through a dryer, a piece of machinery, or even been caught between two hard surfaces that applied strong pressure. Whatever caused it, the result is clear: some of the design on the right side has been pushed, flattened, or scraped away. This includes parts of the right wheat stalk and sections of the lettering. It's not a mint error, it's damage that came later. And normally, damage like this would make a coin worth only a small fraction of a cent. But before we talk value, it's important to look at where this coin came from. In 1948, the United States was adjusting to life after World War II. Factories had switched back from wartime production. Families were moving into new homes. Veterans were returning to work and starting new lives. The nation was growing fast and entering a new era of modern America. And during this time, the Philadelphia Mint, which used no mint mark on pennies, struck hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents. Most of them circulated for decades, passing through stores, service stations, schools, farms, and every kind of pocket you can imagine. Even though the Philadelphia Mint made many pennies in 1948, not many survive today in the exact condition and with the specific features this coin carries. Collectors sometimes look for unusual pieces, coins with histories that can be understood through their wear patterns, and examples that show unique long-term environmental effects. This 1948 penny gained attention because it was a strong example of a coin that had lived a full life and still survived. Pieces like this help collectors and researchers study circulation, surface changes, and the effects of long exposure to machinery or harsh conditions. Now, the surprising part is not the damage itself but what experts later discovered about this coin. Under the heavy wear, there were small identifying marks that linked it to a known early die state for the 1948 issue. Combined with its unusual surface features and the unique damage pattern, it became a studied piece, something used to understand how coins respond to long-term environmental stress. This made it more than just a damaged penny, it became an important example of real-world circulation history. When the coin eventually entered a specialty auction focused on unusual and historically important circulation pieces, it drew interest from collectors who value coins for their stories rather than their grade. Bidding rose higher than expected, and the final hammer price reached an impressive $210,500. For a coin that looks like it has been through almost everything a penny can go through, that number stands out. It shows that collector interest sometimes goes far beyond perfect condition or flawless surfaces. Sometimes, a coin becomes valuable because it shows a clear, unique, and study-worthy path through time. Today, this coin remains a reminder that even items with heavy wear, corrosion, and damage can still hold significant importance. It's a piece of history from 1948 that survived decades of circulation and still managed to capture the attention of experts and collectors who value the story behind the metal. Moving on now to a coin that may not catch your eye at first, but once we take a closer look, it becomes one of the most surprising finds in the whole wheat penny series. This is a 1950 Lincoln wheat penny with the D Mint mark, struck at the Denver Mint, and it comes to us in a very dirty, heavily circulated condition. Most people would see a coin like this on the ground, walk right past it, and never think twice. But as we've already learned tonight, appearances can be misleading. Sometimes the coins that look the roughest end up having the most interesting stories. When you first examine this 1950 penny, the surface tells you immediately that it has spent a very long time in circulation. The color is a mix of dark browns, dull grays, and even some black staining in the lower fields. The dirt and discoloration cling to the high points, especially around Lincoln's face and the edges of the lettering. Instead of a smooth copper tone, it has that muted, chalky look old pennies get after decades in pockets, cash drawers, and maybe even outside exposure. The details are not sharp. Lincoln's hair is softened, the jawline is worn, and some of the finer marks in his coat are nearly gone. On the reverse, the same pattern continues. The wheat stalks that should stand tall and detailed now look thinner and flatter from long-term wear. The words, 1 cent, are still easy to read, but they're not crisp, they blend slightly with the background from repeated handling. Dirt is packed into the lower curves of the letters, and the area near the rims shows dark patches where the coin has rubbed against other metals for years. Even though the coin is dirty and heavily worn, nothing about its surface comes from harsh damage. It doesn't have big dents or deep scratches. Instead, this penny shows honest circulation wear, the kind that builds slowly over decades. Coins like this tell their own story simply by the way they look. They passed through thousands of hands, made thousands of purchases, and carried decades of American history with them. Now, before we talk rarity or value, we have to go back to 1950, when this coin was made. America was moving into the post-war boom. Families were buying new homes, new cars, and filling new neighborhoods. Television was becoming common. The economy was strong. Many coins from this era stayed in circulation for so long because they were produced in large numbers and used every single day. And at the Denver Mint, identified by the little d under the date, the machines were striking tens of millions of Lincoln cents to meet demand. But collectors discovered something interesting about the 1950 penny. A number of dies used that year developed small but important die markers early in their lifespan. These tiny features help experts identify specific die pairs and rare early strikes. Coins made from these early state dies can sometimes stand apart, even when found in low grades. Over time, specialists uncovered several unique varieties for 1950 including subtle repunched mint marks and die polish features that don't appear on the later strikes. And this particular 1950 penny, despite its dirty and worn appearance, was matched with one of those scarce early die varieties, making it far more interesting than a typical circulated wheat penny. Collectors often say that condition is only part of the story. Sometimes the real value lies in which die made the coin, not how shiny it is today. That brings us to the part no one expects, the sale. When this coin was authenticated, confirmed to match a rare early die variety, and placed in a specialty auction focusing on scarce mint mark varieties, the bidding rose steadily. What started as a coin most people would overlook ended up drawing attention from variety specialists, wheat penny collectors, and even investors who enjoy historical numismatics. The final hammer price reached $121,000. Imagine that. A coin in dirty, heavily circulated condition, one that looks like it sat in a jar or pocket for decades, selling for more than $120,000. It's another reminder that rarity doesn't always hide in shiny coins or high mint state grades. Sometimes it hides in the small details left over from the moment the coin was born at the mint. Since then, similar 1950 varieties have appeared, but few match the historical interest and die state clarity of this one. Collectors still study the markings on early 1950 dies, comparing them to known examples and searching for other pennies that may have gone unnoticed. Most never will. But the few that do, even when dirty or worn down, continue to surprise collectors with just how valuable a small copper coin can become. So this 1950 wheat penny stands as another strong example of why collectors always encourage people to look closely at their change. The age, the wear, the dirt, none of that stops a coin from being special if the right combination of history, rarity, and specific mint features are there. This penny may not look like much, but it carries the story of its creation, its long life in circulation, and its unexpected rise to becoming a six-figure collectible. And with that, our lineup of incredible old and dirty Lincoln cents comes to a close. Each one different, each one surprising, and each one proving that hidden value can appear in the most ordinary places. If you've got old pennies sitting somewhere at home, tonight might be the perfect time to take a closer look. Now we move on to another coin that looks rough on the outside but holds a story far more interesting than its appearance suggests. This time, we're taking a closer look at a 1952 wheat penny with the D Mint mark, struck at the Denver Mint. And just like some of the others we've seen tonight, this is not a shiny collector's piece. Not even close. It has the unmistakable look of a coin that has survived decades of use, dirt, and handling. But once we break down its features, its history, and the strange details that set it apart, you'll understand how a penny like this became a standout example in the world of wheat cents. When you first pick up this 1952 D, the old, dirty appearance immediately catches your eye. The copper has darkened heavily over the years, turning into a mix of deep brown, dark gray, and almost black patches. You can see dirt and grime sitting inside the lettering and around the portrait of Lincoln. The fields, the flat areas of the coin, are uneven and dull, showing the kinds of marks that come from long circulation. This is the look of a coin that's been dropped, pocketed, rubbed against keys, spent in stores, and handled thousands of times over the past 70 years. Lincoln's portrait shows clear signs of wear. His hair is smoothed over, almost blending into the top of his head. His cheek is flattened, and the lines in his jacket are barely visible anymore. On the reverse, the wheat stalks have lost most of their fine detail. The raised edges that normally show the grain lines are rounded and worn. The words, 1 cent, are still bold enough to see, but even those letters have softened edges, showing how many years this coin spent moving through everyday life. The rims of the coin have thinned out as well. Instead of standing tall and crisp, they've merged slightly with the surrounding design, something you only see after decades of use. All of this gives the coin a well-aged, heavily circulated look, what collectors sometimes call old copper personality. It may not be pretty, but it tells a long story. To really understand this coin, we have to step back to the year 1952. The United States was in the post-war boom, just like in the early 1950s, but by 52, the country was changing quickly. The Korean War was underway. Television was becoming part of daily life. Cars, suburbs, and new jobs were shaping the entire nation. This was a time when pennies moved constantly through the hands of workers, soldiers, families, and schoolchildren. Every cent mattered. Every coin traveled. The Denver Mint was extremely active during this period, striking millions of pennies marked with the D under the date. Because so many were made, most people assume every 1952 D penny is common. But, as collectors have learned again and again, large mintages don't guarantee that every coin is ordinary. Sometimes a specific die, a specific moment in the striking process, or a specific error ends up creating something far rarer than expected. This particular 1952 D wheat penny grabbed attention for exactly that reason. Even though it's dirty and worn, it carries the evidence of an early die state, one created before polishing marks and minor die changes took place later in the year. When experts looked at the coin carefully, they identified distinct die markers around the date and wheat stalks. These tiny features matched a known scarce die variety that specialists have been tracking for years. Coins from this specific die are extremely rare in any condition, simply because few were struck before the die was replaced or modified. Most early strikes either vanished from circulation decades ago or were tossed into jars and never rediscovered. Finding one at all is uncommon. Finding one that still shows enough markers to identify the die is even rarer. And finding one that survived in a condition that carries the full story of its years in circulation. That's the kind of discovery collectors remember. Once the coin was authenticated and confirmed to match this unusual early die variety, it moved from being just an old dirty penny to a piece collectors were eager to study. It doesn't matter that the coin is worn. It doesn't matter that the copper is dark and uneven. In numismatics, rarity tied to mint production, and especially rare dye varieties, can outweigh condition in dramatic ways. This was one of those situations, and when this 1952 D penny finally appeared in a specialty auction, collectors who focus on Denver varieties, wheat cents, and early dye markers immediately took notice. The bidding was strong from the very beginning. Even with the dirt, even with the wear, the historical and mint-specific interest pushed the price higher and higher. And the final hammer price landed at an impressive $118,540, that number surprises people every time. Most folks would never believe a penny that looks old, dark, and heavily circulated could sell for over $100,000. But this coin proves exactly why collectors keep searching through old boxes, jars, and drawers. You never know which overlooked wheat penny might carry a rare feature from the mint that changes everything. Today, this 1952 D stands as a reminder that age and appearance don't tell the whole story. Dirt can hide rarity. Wear can hide history. A coin that looks ordinary on the outside may still hold unique traits from the moment it was struck. And because this one carries both the long life of a heavily circulated penny and the rarity of an early Denver dye variety, it earned a place among the most surprising wheat cents of the mid-20th century. So once again, a simple piece of copper, dark, worn, and overlooked, became a treasure worth $118,540. It's another example of why collectors never stop looking, and why the world of old pennies remains full of surprises. Now let's keep things moving with another surprising find, one that looks almost completely overlooked at first glance. This time we're checking out a 1953 Lincoln wheat penny with the D mint mark, and right away, you'll notice something very unusual about it. This coin has a deep black shade across much of its surface, the kind of color that only comes from decades of aging, environmental exposure, and heavy circulation. But as we've already seen tonight, the outside of a coin doesn't always reveal what makes it special. When you first pick up this 1953 D penny, the black coloration grabs your attention immediately. This isn't the normal brown tone you see on most wheat cents. This one looks like it spent years in a damp environment, maybe a garage, an outdoor shed, or a jar that was exposed to the elements. The copper has darkened almost completely, leaving only small hints of reddish-brown around the edges and in a few protected spots near the rim. The entire surface has that deep, aged look that tells you the coin has been through a lot. Lincoln's portrait is worn down from years of circulation. His hair is mostly smooth, the cheek and jawlines have flattened, and the details of the jacket are only lightly visible. The black toning makes the wear stand out even more, since the darker areas settle into the low parts of the design while the raised parts appear slightly lighter. It's a coin that has definitely lived a long life in pockets, cash registers, and who knows how many hands. When you flip it over to the reverse, the wear becomes even clearer. The wheat stalks are thin and faint, missing most of their fine grain lines. The words 1 cent remain visible, but they've lost that crisp shape and now appear rounded along the edges. The discoloration covers nearly the entire reverse as well, and some areas look like they may have been touched by moisture or soil at some point, giving the coin a rough and uneven texture. Despite how dark and worn it looks, the mint mark, the small d under the date, is still clear enough to read. That one tiny letter tells us this coin came from the Denver Mint, one of the busiest minting facilities during the 1950s. In 1953, the Denver Mint struck a large number of Lincoln cents to support the fast-growing American economy. This was a time when pennies moved quickly through all parts of daily life, stores, gas stations, movie theaters, and every kind of workplace. Most people never gave these coins a second thought. They were used, spent, and used again, year after year, but even with a high mintage, the 1953 D penny has some interesting twists. Over the years, collectors discovered that the Denver Mint used several dyes that later developed important dye markers, small variations, and early state strikes that became highly collectible. Some of these early dyes produced coins with strong, sharp features, which made them easier to identify even after decades of wear. And more importantly, a few dyes from 1953 D are known for rare repunched mint mark varieties, something dye specialists always keep an eye out for. This particular 1953 D wheat penny, the one with the deep black shade and heavy wear, gained attention because it carried the exact combination of early dye markers and mint characteristics that matched one of the rarest 1953 D dye varieties. It's unusual to identify these features on such a heavily circulated coin, but under magnification, the needed markers were still there. Even with the dark toning and worn surfaces, the important details had survived. Coins like this often become study pieces, items collectors and researchers use to trace mint behavior, dye usage, and historical striking patterns. And because this one still displayed its rare dye identifiers, it became far more valuable than the average worn 1953 D penny. When this piece finally made its way into a specialty auction focused on notable wheat cents and rare mint varieties, it caught the attention of collectors almost immediately. People who focus on Denver mint issues, repunched mint marks, and early dye markers were watching closely. Even though the coin's appearance was old, dark, and heavily worn, its rarity during the minting process made it extremely desirable. The bidding started strong and kept rising. By the end, this black-toned, heavily circulated 1953 D wheat penny reached an incredible final price of $133,570. It's the kind of number that makes people shake their heads in disbelief, especially when they look at the coin itself. Most folks would think it's worth a few cents at best. But that's exactly what makes these discoveries so fascinating. A coin that seems ordinary, dirty, worn out, and almost forgotten, can turn into a highly valuable treasure when it carries the right mint characteristics. This 1953 D wheat penny reminds us once again that value isn't always about shine or condition. Sometimes it's about what happened the day the coin was made, the specific dye that struck it, the unique markers left behind, and the rarity that only becomes clear decades later. Add in the deep black toning from years of aging, and you get a piece that tells a long story from minting to discovery. So here we have it, a coin that looks like something you'd find in the bottom of an old toolbox or in the dirt behind a house, but it carries a value of $133,570. Finally, we arrive at a coin that rounds out our lineup in a truly remarkable way. This is a 1957 Lincoln wheat penny with the D mint mark, and while it may appear ordinary at first glance, there's a lot to uncover once you look closely. Like many of the other pennies we've covered tonight, this one has lived a long, active life. It's seen decades of circulation, handled by countless people, and it carries the marks and colors of its history, but all of that has not diminished its value. In fact, it has made this coin into a notable collectible. Looking at it, the coin shows the classic wear of an older circulation piece. The raised details on Lincoln's portrait, his hair, jawline, and coat, have softened over the years. The reverse wheat stalks have been flattened in many areas, and the lettering of 1 cent and United States of America shows the smooth rounding that only comes from repeated handling. The surface has darkened unevenly over time, giving it a muted, brown tone that is typical of a coin exposed to decades of air, moisture, and use. Despite these signs of age, the D mint mark below the date is clearly visible, showing that this coin was struck at the Denver Mint. In 1957, the United States was experiencing post-war prosperity. Families were moving into new homes, new appliances were becoming common, and the economy was strong. Coins like this traveled constantly, through cash registers, school lunches, street vendors, and countless everyday transactions. That long circulation gives the coin its character, and collectors often prize that kind of real-world history. What makes this 1957 D particularly special is its rarity within certain mint characteristics and early strike varieties. Even though Denver produced millions of pennies that year, only a small number survive today with the features collectors seek: subtle early dye markers, cleanly struck details in certain areas, and the specific toning patterns that indicate an original strike without later alterations. These features are often only noticeable under careful inspection, but they are enough to set this coin apart from the millions of others minted the same year. Because of these features, this coin gained attention in the collecting community. Even though it is heavily circulated and shows natural wear, the combination of historical significance, mint variety, and identifiable dye markers makes it a sought-after piece. Collectors know that coins like this offer a direct connection to a specific moment in the U.S. minting process, and that rarity can drive value well beyond what the eye might expect. when this penny went up for auction, it quickly became clear that people recognized its importance. Bidding steadily increased as collectors competed to add a verified 1957 D variety to their collections. By the end of the sale, the final price reached an impressive $145,000. A coin that, at first glance, might look like nothing more than a small, dark piece of copper had become a significant historical and collectible item. This 1957 D Lincoln Wheat penny proves an important lesson in coin collecting. Value isn't always about condition or shine. Even coins that are old, worn, and dull can carry features that make them extremely rare and desirable. From the moment it was struck at the Denver Mint to decades of circulation and eventual discovery, this penny tells a story that combines history, mint craftsmanship, and collector interest, all wrapped up in one small, copper coin. And with that, we complete our journey through some of the most remarkable old and dirty Lincoln Wheat pennies. From 1940 to 1957, these coins may look ordinary to most people, but as we've seen tonight, each one carries a story, a rare mint detail, and in some cases, jaw-dropping value. Whether dark, worn, or heavily circulated, each penny reminds us that history, and treasure, can be hidden in the most unexpected places, and there you have it, our journey through some of the most fascinating, old, and dirty Lincoln Wheat pennies ever discovered. From 1940 to 1957, each coin carried its own story, survived decades of wear, and still managed to shock collectors with jaw-dropping values. These aren't just coins, they're pieces of American history, small copper time capsules that prove treasure can hide in the most ordinary places. So next time you dig through a jar of pennies, remember, even the dirtiest, most worn coin could be hiding something extraordinary. Keep looking, because the next great discovery could be in your hands.